Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back to another FIFA 22 video where today I'm going to be sharing with you a new formation that I was trying out again in this weekend league, and it was the 4-2-2. Now this is a formation that I absolutely love and have used a lot this year and especially a lot last year, and definitely one of my more favorite formations and definitely one that I really try and go back to whenever I can. Now normally my 5-2-1-2 is my best formation that I use. Now this weekend league I found just 2 or 3 games in was incredibly sweaty, and I actually struggled a little bit using the 5-back formation. So I actually dropped into this 4-2-2 formation, just going back to something I was very comfortable with, and I had a lot more success. And it was really quite disappointing this week. Obviously FUT champions, especially at team of the season, is always very sweaty, and obviously everybody's trying their best to get as many wins as possible. But just trying out in that 5-back formation, trying to play something quite fun was just not really possible because everyone else was trying to sweat so hard. And I had to kind of go for something a little bit more tactful and a little bit more defensive almost to kind of make a little bit more sense and have a bit more success. Ended up finishing on 15-5, so it kind of worked very well in the end. Now, with that being said, these are the tactics that I ended up using for my 4-2-2. And even with these tactics, I had a lot of fun. And even with these tactics, they were 2 attacking, which was crazy. And that just shows how sort of negative everybody was playing in weekend league. Now, in terms of the defensive style, I played on balanced. Now, balanced is very effective in this formation. The press doesn't really work too well. Obviously, you can see the formation, the way it's set up. There's just a bit too much of a gap in behind the strikers and in front of the DMs. That those players, it's very hard to press them. So I tend to not play a press in this formation. In terms of the depth, I was playing on around about 60, which was a good depth. And one thing I was finding, and I think happens a lot in FUT Champions especially, because we've been playing a bit of Rivals today, and it's definitely not as common in there. It's definitely more common in FUT Champs. I feel like everybody is playing on maybe 20, 25 depth. Everybody's depth was really low. It was very difficult to break a lot of people down. And I found that when I was playing on around about 60, other people were getting in behind me quite easily. And naturally I was having to defend a lot one-on-one, which was quite surprising. But I'm not going to change. I'm not going to start building tactics very negatively. If that's how certain people want to play, they're more entitled to play that way. I'm going to stick to how I play, and 60 depth would work very well for me. I managed to get obviously 15-5 in the end, which I wasn't too disappointed with. So it does show that you can get good results playing a little bit more offensive. It just can be frustrating playing against those type of players. Now, with that being said, this formation I played slow build up and possession, and this was the main reason why I played this was because, again, the quality of opposition was really high this weekend, and also the quality of team that I came up against was crazy. I came up against so many like prime icon moments, R9s and Cruyffs and players like that. So a lot of crazy good players, and you just can't afford to open your team up too much. And this is, I think, one of the problems, because it's so easy to get such a good team this year. You really can't afford to open your team up too much. You know, if you was playing on fast build up, I tried one game on fast build up against a guy who was a decent player, but he wasn't a super high skill player, and he was just able to cut through me with ease. So I went to slow build up and possession. Just meant that I had to be a little bit more patient in attacks, and that is something that's really key. You have to be patient in attacks. Few times too many, I tried to rush the ball forward too much, and I just didn't have the players up the top end of the pitch to be able to capitalize on it. So I really had to play a little bit slower, a little bit more careful, and it did work in the end. Like I said, I got 15-5 in the end, so it did manage to work. So you really have to play to that. You can't afford to open your team up too much nowadays, which is a real shame, but it's kind of a must if you are someone who wants to get a lot of wins. In terms of the width, we went on around about 60. I don't have the best and best pace in my team. You know, I'm using Puskas and Zidane as my wide cams, so I can't afford the width to go too wide. If you have a bit more pace, you can maybe push it out sort of 70-75, but because I didn't have the pace to get in behind, and there was plenty of times when Puskas and Zidane got in down the wings, but they just didn't have the pace to kind of utilize that space in behind. So I decided to go for them a little bit more narrow, just so it was a little bit easier to get possession and link up the play in the midfield. But if you have more pace, I recommend going a little bit wider. Players in the box went for 6. I think I probably would say drop that maybe back down to 4 or 5. One of the problems I had again was a few too many players got into the box, and it was a little bit too easy for people to counter me. So I definitely that's something you definitely need to be wary of. Corners I go for 3, even though it's kind of a little bit pointless because everybody brings their keeper out, so you can never cross the ball. You have to go short anyway, so you may as well go to 1 on the corners. Now, in terms of the instructions, we have one of our strikers. I had Heung-min Son, who actually I was really disappointed with. He didn't actually do that well for me. So anybody who's interested in buying Son, I was actually quite disappointed. He played at striker for me for the whole weekend league, and I don't think he got that 1-to-1 goal ratio. So I think he played maybe the 20 games and got about 14 goals. So I was a little bit disappointed with Son, but I recommend going with your quickest striker on stay central and getting behind. I had Lewandowski because he's a bit more of kind of not super quick. You know, I didn't want to use him on getting behind because he didn't have the pace against players like Varane's and Van Dijk's and people like that. So I used him on false 9 just so he linked up the play a little bit easier. He doesn't drop into a cam slot. He just kind of drops in behind Son more than anything, and then he drifts around. So it's not really a cam. It is kind of more of a centre forward, I guess. And it worked very well. So whichever player you've got that can do that role for you, I definitely recommend doing that. If you have two super pacey strikers, I recommend putting them both on getting behind. And then I'd actually recommend leaving them both on stay forwards. That was something that happened a lot against me this year, this weekend. A lot of people had their strikers on stay forward. So just a quick ball up to the strikers. And a lot of the time there was 2-on-2, 2-on-3. So that's definitely something I'd recommend if you have those two pacey strikers. In terms of the two wide cams, we've got Puskas and Zidane. Now, both of these guys, I would recommend having them on get into the box, of course. You want both your cams getting into the box, whether that be for cutbacks, whether that be for crosses. A lot of the time, I went down the wing and was able to look for cutbacks, especially to Zidane, and generally crosses at the back post, players like Lewandowski and Puskas for sort of tap-ins. So that's very effective. You need to make sure you've got your players on get in the box. Also on free roam, it's super important. They have to drift around. But especially when you don't have the most pace. If you had a bit more pace, you can maybe mix it up a little bit more. But because I don't have the most pace on players like Zidane, I have to be a bit more clever, a bit more tactful in the way I attack, and just kind of make it a little bit easier for myself in those situations. Now, next up, the two defensive midfielders. These guys really want to be out and out DMs. One of the biggest problems that I have in my team, especially with Bellingham and McGinn, they're really not out and out DMs. And I find that that's definitely a bit of a problem that I had going into this weekend league. Didn't have proper defensive midfielders. That's something I need to rectify for next weekend. You want proper DMs that are kind of the powerful, strong DMs. You know, players like Vieira work super well in this formation because you need players like Vieira, like Hullet, those guys that can really intercept the ball a lot. So you could potentially try going on aggressive interceptions. Obviously, this can occasionally backfire, but it's something that's really important. Your DMs need to win the ball. So you need to have them on cut passing lanes and stay back while attacking. So the real strong defensive midfielders are super important in these positions. Like I said, you need guys that are super reliable when it comes to interceptions, because counter-attacking can be very strong in this formation, especially if you've got good pace, which I don't really have in this team because that's not really the way I like to play. I like to dominate the game a little bit more, but if you have pace, having proper DMs that can intercept the ball can really set you away on counter-attacks really easily. And then in terms of the back four, unfortunately, I had to go with the whole back four on stay back while attacking, which isn't quite how I like to play, especially when I've got someone like Trent in there, who is kind of more of a suited to the wing back role, which is why I like to use the 5-back formation and have them as wing backs getting forwards. But obviously, I found very quickly, especially this weekend league, the caliber of player was so high quality, and you just couldn't leave too much space in behind. You left players out exposed. You just got absolutely nailed to the wall. So you really have to have the whole back four on stay back while attacking. And generally, if you can get sort of proper defenders, you obviously we've got the Connor Cody in here. I just subbed off straight away because he was just a placeholder more than anything. But you need proper, good, reliable defenders. So Trent wasn't the best for this role. Obviously more suited to a wingback role. So you want obviously proper, strong, reliable fullbacks in this position. And then in terms of Alisson in goal, generally you want to have your keepers on comes to crosses and sweep keeper. Alisson for me was absolutely mental. He made some absolutely cracking saves this weekend. So if you haven't used him, definitely recommend using him. But that was it for the 4-2-2 formation. I actually haven't used this formation for probably about 6 weeks. And I went back to it and it was super reliable. In a quite a frustrating weekend league, obviously the quality of play was super high. Very sweaty games. Every game was just like your life was on it. And it wasn't the most fun experience, but this formation managed to get me 15-5 in a very sweaty weekend league. So I was very pleased with this formation, very pleased with these tactics. They worked very well with not the most crazy overpowered meta squad anyway. You know, obviously players like Lewandowski, and we don't have super pace in this team. So I was quite pleased with how we played. So I definitely recommend this 4-2-2 for next weekend when the Bundesliga comes. If you guys want to try it out, that would be much appreciated. Let me know down in the comment section how it goes to you. Make sure you drop a thumbs up and do subscribe as well if you are new to the channel. But that is all for today, guys. Have an awesome day. I'm out.